Hey guys, tonight we settle in somewhere awkward. Fluorescent lights buzzing, plastic forks clinking, and you, stuck in a folding chair by a trash can, trying to pretend you don't hear the wet splat of someone's leftover ambrosia salad being dumped an inch from your elbow. You're at your own family reunion. And across the room at the long, linen-covered table for family, your brother smirks, raises a red Solo cup and a mock toast, and says, "Sorry, this table's for family only." You freeze, you blink, then you smile, because it's always safer to smile. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sink into the fold-out chair. It's barely stable. It wobbles with your weight like it's trying to decide whose side it's on. You glance toward the main table, cousins, spouses, kids with icing on their faces, all orbiting your brother like he's some sort of middling sun. The room smells like fried chicken and cheap cologne. Your plate sits on your knees, your fork's missing a tine. And that smirk, that smug little smirk, it's somehow louder than the hired DJ spinning late 2000s wedding hits. The Romans believed family feasts were sacred, right down to the seating. Where you sat showed who you were. The lowest-ranking guest sat closest to the door, or, well, the trash. And while scholars still argue whether dinner seating caused more Roman betrayals than politics did, it's safe to say tonight's vibe would make Caesar wince. You're not dramatic. You're not mad. You just wonder, when did you stop being family? You stab at the coleslaw with a plastic fork that bends, like a yoga instructor in mid-pose. You chew, you swallow. You pretend not to notice that someone's paper napkin just blew under your chair. You don't pick it up. There's a little rebellion in that. Your eyes drift toward the cake table. 3 tiers of supermarket frosting, and 24 candles someone clearly gave up lighting halfway through. And like a dropped VHS tape of your life, your mind rewinds to your 8th birthday. Dinosaur plates, balloons sagging in the humid July air. Your brother had insisted on cutting the cake himself. He sliced yours into the smallest piece, said it was to make sure you didn't get a sugar rush and break stuff. You laughed then. It didn't feel cruel. Not really. But those moments kept stacking, like layers of cake that got a little drier every year. The small jabs, the subtle exclusions, you chalked them up to sibling stuff, until one day it wasn't funny anymore. Historians still argue whether ancient birthday rituals were celebrations of life or subtle power plays. In some early traditions, the biggest piece of cake went to the family member with the most authority. Makes you wonder what your brother would have done with a cake back then. Probably stabbed it with a tiny flag that said, "Reserved." And now, here you are, older, wiser, still cake adjacent. Watching him pass slices down the table like communion wafers, each one a reminder that you're outside the circle. The frosting looks too sweet anyway. You pretend you're not hungry. You pretend a lot of things. Behind you, the trash can lid slams shut. It sounds oddly final. You shift your weight, and the chair gives a creak like it's issuing a formal complaint. There's a fly circling your cup of flat lemonade, and you're too tired to swat it. Across the room, your brother's gesturing big, loud, the kind of laughing that sounds practiced, like a politician telling a joke he's told 100 times. You wonder if any of them know the story, the one about the favor. It was just one favor. A big one, sure, but not unreasonable. He asked you to co-sign a loan. His voice had that desperate edge, the kind people use when they know they've burned all their other bridges. You told him you'd think about it. He didn't like that. When you finally said no, it was like you'd keyed his car or insulted his dog. He didn't speak to you for 6 months after that. Historians still argue whether the collapse of personal lending networks in early 19th century America strengthened family bonds or shredded them entirely. Families used to be walking banks. You were supposed to trust blood more than math. But as one too many court cases show, the numbers almost always win. The weirdest part? You didn't even blame him, not entirely. He was drowning, and you wouldn't throw him a rope, but you also couldn't afford to sink with him. He called it betrayal. You called it survival. Since then, every reunion has had a little less and a little more union, like a stiff business event where everyone wears name tags but nobody actually talks. He doesn't mention the loan. You don't mention the voicemail. And somehow, a folding chair next to a trash can became the silent symbol of that stalemate. Some wars aren't loud. They just smolder. The sweet potatoes have gone cold, but they're still clumped stubbornly to the plastic spoon like they've made a pact not to be eaten. Across the room, your brother wipes gravy off his shirt sleeve without missing a beat in conversation. You envy that casual arrogance, like the universe has always bent just slightly in his direction. Another forkful, another flashback. This time to Thanksgiving 2 years ago. The one where your aunt brought a new boyfriend and your uncle got drunk and reenacted his high school touchdown using a decorative gourd. But what sticks isn't the chaos. It's the moment your brother passed the cranberry sauce right over your hand like you were invisible. He'd leaned forward, asked someone else if they wanted it, like you weren't even part of the table's gravitational field. And yet, weirdly, you remember the stuffing being excellent. Thanksgiving has always been about more than food. The original feast, historians still argue, was either a gesture of peace or a desperate diplomatic stunt. Maybe both. What's agreed on is that the seating was strategic. The Englishmen sat on crates, the Wampanoag on the ground. It wasn't just about who ate, it was about where you sat while doing it. You've been seated on the metaphorical floor ever since, but the weirdest part of that Thanksgiving wasn't the snub. It was how everyone else saw it and kept smiling, carving turkey, pouring wine, pretending not to notice the human cold front forming between the mashed potatoes and the green beans. That's the thing about family gatherings. Everyone's fluent in denial, like they've all agreed it's better to endure awkward silences than risk open honesty. You look down at your plate, the gravy's congealed, so has everything else. A paper plate hits the trash can behind you with a thud, startling enough to send a jolt through your plastic chair legs. Someone mumbles, "Oops," like they've just dropped a pebble into a well. You glance back reflexively, just in time to catch your cousin's kid giggling as they aim their next missile of soggy baked beans. You consider relocating. But where would you go? There's a certain poetic tragedy to this spot. The edge of family, the periphery of belonging. A liminal space, if you want to get academic about it. Anthropologists love that word, liminal. It means being on the threshold, neither in nor out. Kind of like adolescence or airport terminals, or, apparently, folding chairs at family reunions. Historians still argue whether medieval banquets seated their black sheep at the literal end of the table, or just left them off the guest list entirely. What we know is, seating arrangements had consequences. Sit too far from the fire, and you froze. Too close to the king, and you risked your head if you made a joke he didn't like. You, tonight, are comfortably out of beheading range. Small victories. Your brother clinks a spoon against his glass. A toast, of course. He stands, clears his throat. To family, he says. The irony is so thick you could spread it on a biscuit. The table applauds. You offer the faintest golf clap, because what else do you do when you're audience to a performance you were never cast in? And yet, part of you wonders, what if you stood up too? What if you raised your voice and offered your own toast? Something cheeky, maybe even kind, but the thought fades fast. You know how this play ends. You've read the script. Your role is silent. The toast dissolves into chatter, utensils clinking, and napkins crumpling like stage curtains dropping after the final act. You sip your lukewarm lemonade and watch your brother ease back into his throne, middle seat, longest side of the table, flanked by 2 generations like a proud general after a quiet victory. You remember a different scene, your grandma's kitchen, the old wooden table with the worn-out corner that always caught your sleeve. Your brother used to sit cross-legged on the counter, swinging his legs like a king surveying his domain. You were the quiet one then too, kneading dough beside Grandma while she hummed church hymns and told you that family isn't always nice, but it's always yours. You believed her. Back then, historians still argue whether ancient Roman families were truly as tight-knit as their mosaics suggest. Some say they were duty-bound, clinging to loyalty out of obligation, not affection. The mosaics never show the arguments, or the folding chairs. You lean forward slightly, trying to hear what your niece is saying. She's giggling about something, her braid bouncing, her plate untouched. You wave. She waves back, small, shy, like you're a stranger she's been taught to recognize, not love. You wonder what she's heard, what they've told her about you. A breeze filters in through the back screen door, carrying the scent of barbecue sauce and citronella. It smells like summers used to, before all the bitterness settled like dust in the corners of your memory. Someone walks by and drops a brownie onto your plate. No eye contact, no comment. Just the silent pity of a crumbly dessert. You smile anyway, because sometimes the tiniest gestures feel like rope bridges over deep emotional pits, even if they sway, even if they don't quite reach the other side. There's a rustle behind you, plastic bags being stuffed, someone clearing the drink cooler, the unofficial signal that the party's moving into its next phase. Board games, old stories, maybe that moment where an uncle insists on showing everyone his vacation slideshow from 1997. You're bracing for it. You wonder if they'll invite you in this time. The living room has always been sacred ground, where the couches form soft fortresses and the inside jokes circle like satellites. You used to belong there, once, before the folding chair, before the loan, before you became the footnote. In ancient Greece, seating guests wasn't just about comfort, it was a ceremony. The Xenia tradition, or guest friendship, governed how people were welcomed. Bread, wine, a seat of honor. If you violated it, the gods were said to take personal offense. Historians still argue whether Odysseus survived as long as he did because of his cleverness, or just because he knew how to work a dinner table. You tonight are no Odysseus. You stand up pretending to stretch and glance toward the house. Through the screen door, you catch a flash of your brother's wife pouring wine. She doesn't look over. No one does. It's like you're a hologram at a party, visible but untouchable. Your feet ache. You've been clenching your toes inside your shoes, the quiet rebellion of someone trying not to scream. You sit back down, and the chair gives that groan again, as if it's just as fed up as you are. Then, out of nowhere, your youngest cousin plops down on the cooler beside you. No fanfare, no comment. She just starts eating her cookie, and for a second, you're not the outcast. You're just two people in the same gravitational field, orbiting a family that doesn't always notice who's drifting. She offers you half of her cookie without looking up, just breaks it clean down the middle and holds it out. Chocolate chip still warm in the center. It's nothing grand, but it lands like a kindness you didn't know you were starving for. You take it, nod your thanks. She nods back. A hummingbird zips past the porch, wings a blur. You both watch it disappear toward the honeysuckle bushes. It's one of those rare pauses that stretches time, like someone's pressed a soft thumb to the record player. For a second, no one is talking. The world hums and buzzes in place, like it's waiting for you to notice it. In early colonial America, the youngest family members often sat on benches or stools at meals, less comfortable, less permanent. But what most people forget is that these seats were closest to the kitchen, to the warmth, to the stories. Historians still argue whether this positioning was meant to teach humility or simply keep them quiet and out of the way. You chew slowly, letting the sweetness fill your mouth. There's something defiant in enjoying this bite, in not rushing it just because your seat is next to the trash can. The wasps don't seem to care where you're sitting. They zigzag near the soda bottles like it's their reunion too. Your cousin nudges your arm. "This family's weird," she says, not asking for agreement, just stating a cosmic truth. You laugh, a little louder than expected. A few heads turn, and in that fleeting moment, somewhere between the hummingbird, the cookie, and the way your laugh breaks like sunlight through clouds, you feel something shift. Not a grand reconciliation. Not yet. Just a small tear in the curtain of exile. Enough to breathe through. A few minutes later, the fire pit crackles to life. Someone tosses in an armful of driftwood like it's a Viking send-off. You hear the word marshmallows echo through the dusk, and chairs begin to scrape across the lawn, pulled inward like a tribal circle. You rise with the others, instinctually at first, then hesitate. The cooler creaks as your cousin stands beside you. "Come on," she says, already walking toward the orange flicker. You follow, slow-footed, uncertain if this is inclusion or accident. Still, you move forward. Fire has always been a centerpiece. Warmth, danger, stories whispered in its halo. In prehistoric caves, early humans painted pictures by firelight, flickering shadows dancing over buffalo hunts and shamanic visions. Historians still argue whether these images were prayers, warnings, or just the world's oldest humblebrags. Either way, fire meant community. You didn't sit alone by it unless you were the wolf. You stop short as your brother gestures vaguely toward an empty lawn chair, not close to him, not far either. The middle distance of tolerance. But it's not the trash can. You sit. A skewer appears in front of your face, marshmallow already stabbed. Your niece grins and hands it over without speaking. Another gift. Another pixel of belonging. Someone begins telling a story about the year the grill caught fire, and your uncle tried to smother it with a pool float. You remember it differently. He used an inflatable dolphin, not a unicorn. But you stay quiet. Let the myth win this time. The flames crack and snap as if applauding the tale. You roast your marshmallow to golden perfection, careful not to burn it. That takes patience. That takes restraint. You bite in, and for the first time all evening, the taste doesn't come with bitterness. Just smoke, sugar, and a strange sense of something healing. The firelight dances over the faces around you, casting everything in a soft, amber glow. The laughter ebbs and flows like a rhythm, predictable in its warmth. For a moment, you forget the chair, the leftovers, and the snubs. The only thing that matters is the fire, the way it beckons you back into the fold, as if the flames have the power to forget all the quiet exclusions of the evening. Someone else tells a story, this time about your mother's infamous lasagna, a dish so spicy that even the dog had to be banished from the room. You laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's familiar, like stepping back into a home you haven't visited in years. You let the laughter roll over you, a wave that drowns out the whispers you thought you'd never escape. As the night stretches on, your brother's chair shifts, nudging closer. Just enough for you to notice. Just enough for you to wonder if it's intentional. Or maybe he's just trying to avoid the mosquitoes. But you don't ask. Instead, you reach for another marshmallow, this time burning it just a little on purpose. You want the crispness. You want the bite. You remember a time, long ago, when these same chairs felt like they belonged to you, when the evening's laughter was your laughter, and the fire's glow wrapped itself around your shoulders like a blanket. But that was before the chair became a symbol of exile, before your family's unspoken rules cemented themselves into your routine. It's funny how traditions can outgrow their meaning. You think back to your aunt's wedding. She'd left the seating chart blank, made everyone choose their own place. Maybe that was the moment you first realized the table wasn't for anyone who didn't already fit in. Even now, with the marshmallow's burnt sweetness in your mouth, you're not sure if this chair is any different than the last one. The night stretches on, and the crackling of the fire grows a little more subdued, the glow faint against the deepening sky. Around you, the conversation lulls, punctuated by soft chuckles and the occasional clink of a bottle being passed. You're not sure if the low murmur of voices is something you're a part of or something you're merely overhearing. It's a strange mix. Familiar, yet distant. You glance around. The family's divided in its own quiet way. The cousins are still telling stories, the older folks are reminiscing, and the kids are quietly plotting their next round of tag. No one bothers to ask about your life, and you're starting to think it's okay. You've learned over time that some silences are like walls, solid and impenetrable, but others, they're like windows, just waiting for the right moment to be opened. You think about the old adage, home is where the heart is. They say that, but no one tells you that sometimes your heart gets lost in the places you thought you belonged. You find yourself wondering if maybe this whole time you've been looking for home in the wrong place. Or worse, maybe home's been a myth all along, an illusion your family has never quite figured out either. The embers glow faintly in the pit, the orange and red hues reflecting the inner warmth of a family trying to make up for all the years of silence. You glance toward your brother again. His chair is now only a few inches away from yours. It's small, it's almost nothing. But it's a shift you didn't expect, but somehow needed. In the distance, a frog croaks. The night air thickens with humidity, the scent of wet earth filling your lungs. You focus on that, the simplicity of it, the reminder that everything changes, even in the stillness. You look down at your hands, noticing how they've become a little less steady, a little more worn than you remembered. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the slow unraveling is part of the process. Your cousin leans over to you again, this time holding a plate of brownies. "You want one?" she asks, her eyes soft. And for a moment, the question doesn't sting. It feels like what it is, a small gesture of offering, a reminder that maybe the story isn't over yet. The brownie is rich and soft, the chocolate practically melting on your tongue. It's the simplest thing, but in that moment, it tastes like a victory, like a quiet acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, you've been seen. No words are exchanged, no explanations given. She just handed it to you, and that, for now, is enough. The night moves around you, but for the first time this evening, you feel like you're part of it. As you eat, your brother gets up to stoke the fire, tossing in another log with the same ease he's always had. He doesn't look at you directly, but there's something in the way he moves, almost hesitant, but not quite. The awkwardness lingers like smoke in the air, but it doesn't seem as thick anymore. You've both reached a quiet understanding without needing to say it aloud. Sometimes it's the smallest shifts that mean the most. You remember a time when the family was always together, no reservations, no awkward silences. Back then, the stories weren't about who was left out or who got a seat at the table. They were just stories, shared without the weight of unspoken rules. But life doesn't stay the same, and people change in ways you can't always predict. Sometimes, the chair you sit in says more than any words could. You think about the folding chair earlier, the one by the trash can, a symbol of being an afterthought, of not being part of the in crowd. But now, the chair you're sitting in feels different. It's closer to the fire, closer to the warmth, and while it might never be in the center, it's no longer by the trash. It's no longer on the outside. As the embers continue to glow, you sit back, your thoughts quieting. The family is laughing again, the stories resuming their familiar rhythm. Maybe you'll never fully fit into the shape they've carved out. But in this moment, as the heat from the fire tickles your skin, you realize that it's okay to be in the edges of the circle. The fire still keeps you warm. The night deepens. The fire crackles, its glow flickering in the corners of your eyes, turning the faces around you into silhouettes. The crickets start their chorus, a steady hum that wraps around the sounds of the evening like a blanket. The air, thick with humidity, is surprisingly soothing. It's almost as if everything has slowed, as if time has caught its breath just for a moment, allowing you to exhale with it. Your cousin reaches over and hands you another brownie, her way of confirming that she's decided to be present, to let this moment unfold however it will. You take it without hesitation, enjoying the warm, gooey texture. You don't need to say anything. The brownie is her offering, and your acceptance is your own quiet way of saying you're here. As the fire's glow grows dimmer, someone suggests another round of marshmallows. But the idea doesn't seem as urgent now. The need for sugary snacks feels almost secondary. Instead, the pull of the evening's slow unraveling feels more important, this strange, fragile peace that settled around you all. The silence has thickened in a way that feels comfortable. There's no need to fill it with forced words or questions. The fire flickers lower now, almost to embers, casting long shadows on the lawn. Your brother, still standing, finally looks at you, his face illuminated by the faintest light. His eyes seem to say more than his mouth has all night. It's the barest of acknowledgments, the kind that feels like a long overdue apology without the pressure of saying it out loud. You don't need the words anymore. Sometimes just being here, together, is enough. The evening stretches on in a languid, easy rhythm. No one rushes to leave. There's something unspoken in the air that keeps everyone tethered to the night, to the fire, and to each other, even in this quiet, imperfect way. Maybe, after all this time, that's the real meaning of family. Not that everyone fits, not that the chairs are always equal, but that there's always room for someone to come back. Even when they've been forgotten, even when they've been left by the trash can, there's always room for them in the circle. As the night winds down, the first whispers of dawn start to paint the edges of the sky. The crickets have quieted, replaced by the gentle rustle of trees in the early morning breeze. The fire, now nothing more than a bed of glowing embers, casts an almost ethereal light on the faces around you. The conversation has shifted from laughter to soft murmurs, the kind of quiet you only find in moments of true connection, when everyone knows it's time to let go of the noise and just be. Your brother finally sits back down beside you. His chair creaks under his weight, and for a moment there's just the sound of his breathing, deep and steady. He doesn't say anything at first, and neither do you. There's no need for words anymore. The space between you has shrunk. No longer awkward, no longer filled with the tension of things unsaid. The stars above have begun to fade, the first light of morning creeping in, but the warmth from the fire still clings to your skin. It's a moment suspended in time, the kind you want to hold on to, even as it slips away. It's strange how quickly things can shift, from an evening of exclusion to a night of quiet, unexpected reconciliation. You think about your brother's smirk earlier, the one that had stung so sharply when he'd pointed you toward the fold-out chair, but now, that same smirk doesn't seem so cruel. Maybe it was never meant to hurt. Maybe it was just a signpost, a way to mark the distance between the two of you, a distance that was slowly shrinking with every passing minute, with every unspoken acknowledgement. Your cousin yawns beside you, stretching toward the cooler for one last bottle of water. The children, now drowsy from the long evening, are huddled together, their heads resting on one another like the last few embers of the fire. Everyone's fading, and so is the night, but in the soft, gradual exit, there's something peaceful. As you sit there, watching the embers burn low and the night turn to morning, you realize that the story isn't about the chair anymore. It's about the space that remains between each of you, the one you're learning to fill again, slowly, carefully, without the need to rush. Maybe it's been there all along. The sun has barely broken the horizon, casting a cool light across the landscape. You're still sitting by the fire, though now the warmth has all but evaporated, leaving only the faintest traces of heat on your skin. The night has drifted away like a dream, leaving behind only the quiet comfort of the present moment. The world feels still, as though everything has settled into place, finally at ease after all the years of tension. Your brother gets up, stretching with a grunt, and starts gathering the remaining marshmallow sticks and plates from around the fire. The others begin to rise too, the evening drawing to a close, but the air between you and him remains relaxed, without the edges it once had. No more sharp glances or forced words. Just the subtle understanding that this moment, this fragile piece, is enough. It's strange how things change. The chair by the trash can no longer carries its weight of exclusion. The laughter that once felt distant now feels like your own. You realize that you were never really on the outside. You'd just been waiting for the right moment to come back in. It's funny how the smallest gestures, like a brownie, a quiet glance, or a shared silence, can shift the course of an entire evening, maybe even of a relationship. The sky brightens further, and with it, the day begins its inevitable rise. You feel the weight of sleep pulling at you, but also a sense of peace you haven't had in a long time. The fire is dying, the embers a faint memory now, but they've left their mark. You'll carry that warmth with you, tucked away for the moments when you need it most. As the last of the chairs are folded up and the cooler is packed away, your brother walks past you once more, This time he offers a small nod. Nothing grand, but it's enough. You return the gesture, a simple acknowledgement of what's been and what might yet be. There are no more chairs to be argued over, no more spaces left empty. Just a quiet understanding that you're here now, and that's all that matters. Now, as the last few people trickle away into the early morning, you feel the softness of the night's memories wrap around you, holding you as the day begins its slow, inevitable rise.